Just a
from the other
reminder,
party.
today's conference is being recorded.
Yeah, personally, again, if I'm just speaking up for myself, I'd like to hear from the Simpsons or their representatives before I would make comment.
All right, let's do that now. Then we'll give.
And I guess I should explain. I mean, I see sections 6.1 and 6.2 obviously is intermingled, right? You make a decision on 6.1, it sort of gives you the decision on 6.2, right?
This is correct.
Yeah. So I mean, they kind of have to be dealt with together. So I don't know procedurally whether that's correct, but that's why I want to hear from the Simpsons on why they feel that we should not have a straight line, but a bent or a crooked line.
No, and you're correct, Councillor Lamb. That was our plan, was to hear them together, so that because the discussion probably is all more or less around the same basic thing. So I'll ask the Simpsons, or if you wish to have one of your representatives speak, or whoever wants to go, please.
Okay, hello. This is Grace Simpson. So I'm going to speak, and then I'll hand it over to our planner as well as our lawyer. Is everyone able to hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, great. So we wanted to extend a thank you to the mayor and the council for having us here today. We also want to thank Paula and Michelle from the municipality for answering our many questions as we work through this process. So we are here today to ensure council understands the reasonableness of our proposed SRA dividing line. Please note, while I intend to speak, I may need to pass the conversation over to my husband, Tyler, depending on the needs of our 2-month-old son. I do ask that you guys turn to page 34 of 39 in the agenda package as we begin our discussion. So first, I want to clarify that our objection to the straight line projection of the SRA dividing line is not based solely on the location of a permanent deck. The addition of a deck was simply to ensure there was a secure location to attach the replacement floating dock. This is the same configuration many other cottagers on the lake utilize due to fluctuating water levels. To clearly display to the municipality, council, and our neighbor that our objection is not solely tied to the permanent deck, this week, to the best of our ability, the deck structure will be removed. Photographs displaying the structure is no longer evident will be sent to Michelle and Tyler Irwin. Please do not mistake this gesture as evidence that there are other suitable locations for a deck and dock on our property. On page 21 in the agenda package, the crivets display the last stake point of the dividing property line. We were well aware of the stake point and assumed the straight line projection proceeded directly to the water, which would be perpendicular to the land. If one stands behind the stake point and draws a straight line, they would see the new deck structure and replacement floating dock are towards the Simpsons property. Based on the crivets proposed SRA dividing line versus our line, the area in question is approximately 100 square meters. This is not an attempt to gather more land. It is to allow the historical use of an area for a dock that has been well established for 20 years. Had we have known about the May 2019 SRA application of the crivets, we would have objected much earlier. In the municipality's official plan, section 9.08.04, it states that no SRA will be stocked up and sold to the riparian landowner where it is used for access by an adjoining property.
Joining conference.
Or where the sale will have a negative impact on the adjoining property owner. In our case, both apply. Our planner, Greg, will speak in more detail shortly on this. There are 5 key reasons. Number 1, eliminating access for egress and ingress for boating. Number 2, an abutting neighbor would have access to land directly in front of our main building. Number 3, eliminating an established and safe location as confirmed by abutting neighbor and renters for 7 years. Please see page 38 and 39 in the agenda package. While the previous owner had intentions of moving the dock, the fact is the dock was not moved for 18 years before the property was sold. If the existing owner thought there was a better location for the dock, they would not have incurred the steep costs or input the time required to construct permanent stone stairs down to the historical location of this dock. This would suggest the optimal location for the dock had already been well established and was never objected to by the Cribbets. While the Cribbets have suggested other locations, we contest these are not suitable due to the topography of the land, including large shallow rocks in the water, a steep shoreline and water entry, and no access path from the main building. Our property has unique features along its shoreline that are not duplicated in the reference Lot 2, which is on page 22 in the agenda package. This can be clearly seen when one views the property on the West Parry Sound Geography Network. We also believe the historic area for the dock represents safe access for young children and individuals with mobility issues. An alternative location would have a negative impact on the safety, access, and affect property value. Danielle Bites, who is a senior sales associate focusing on properties in Parry Sound area, noted, and I quote, "Should the shore road allowance portion be purchased by the neighboring property, I do believe it will have a negative impact in value for your property. The potential of neighbors accessing the portion will likely be a deterrent for future purchasers. Also, the placement of the current dock location is in a more protected area and is more easily accessible." While the Cribbets may own property up to the SRA, this property that is owned is highly treed and presents a high amount of privacy. This would also result in the elimination of a defined environmentally protected area, which is defined by the Ministry of Natural Resources, which Mr. Jackson cites in his report without evidence. And finally, if there was another alternative location, it would result in significant disturbance to the natural lands, which contradicts the official plan 13.04.6, which is another negative impact to our property. The municipality has indicated in past SRA closure applications there have been no objections to the SRA closures. This demonstrates the situation between the Simpsons and the Cribbets is unique. The fact that the SRA application process offers an opportunity for the adjoining property owner to object demonstrates there is no bylaw or no official plan that states a straight line projection following the property line must be followed. It does create a new precedent when the SRA is sold and contradicts the bylaw or the official plan. For Council's benefit, we had agreed to the following in an effort to secure a settlement of the SRA as outlined in our application. We would pay $1,500 of the Cribbets' legal fees. We would resolve any setback matters as required through a minor variance with no objections from the Cribbets. Both parties would consent to the respective SRA applications. We would pay any additional surveying costs associated with this matter. We would remove the existing woodshed and retaining wall structures, which were built by the previous owner and are located partially on the Cribbets' land. And we would remove our objection to the illegal placement of the Cribbets' propane tank near the property line. Unfortunately, the agreement fell through after we sought clarification. However, I want to be clear that we do not object to any of these conditions noted in the proposed settlement agreement, and we would agree to finalize these terms with the Cribbets to ensure a reasonable resolution for all parties involved and to remove the burden on Council to decide on this matter. Finally, we are encouraging the Council to visit 89 Amaroq Trail prior to making a decision on this matter to fully understand the unique topography and the fact that this matter boils down to a very small area. As this matter is critical to the use of our property, we will pursue all available options in an effort to reach a reasonable resolution. We thank the Mayor and the Council for giving us time during this meeting. We believe we're very close to an agreement with the Cribbets, and we do remain open to further negotiations should Council choose to encourage both parties to explore this matter. So now I'm going to pass it over to our planner, Greg Barker.
Hi, good evening, Council, and thank you, Grace. I appreciate the opportunity to speak at this point in the agenda. I think in our minds we had anticipated providing these comments during the discussion on the Simpson application, but I would agree they're sort of intertwined, so it certainly represents a good opportunity to provide our perspective, because any decision on the Cribbets would ultimately have a reciprocal decision for the Simpsons. So I have a few comments for Council's consideration from a planning perspective. The Whitestone Official Plan, as Grace mentioned, Section 908.4 on shore road allowances provides no shorter road allowance will be stopped up and sold to the riparian landowner where it is used for access by an adjoining property owner or where the sale will have a negative impact on an adjoining property owner. The official plan does not make reference to the sale of a shore road allowance following a straight line projection of side lot lines. In fact, the municipal application form requires applicants to show the proposed projection of the lot line to the water's edge. There are a number of references to precedent and straight line projections throughout the agenda materials, and in my opinion, it gives the impression that this is the only option Council should be considering. Specifically, the planning report under Section 622 provides that straight line projection as option 1, despite the fact that this would contradict all the materials provided in support of the Simpson application. And option 2 relates to an amended boundary extension to encompass the Simpson structures. It is unclear to me as to what is being amended in this instance. In consideration of the Cribbet application, it's our opinion that their proposal would offend official plan policy 9.08.4. Firstly, the lands in question, and again, I think it's worth emphasizing the total area of land we're dealing with here is approximately 100 square meters. So, Council, it's a relatively small area of land, but it's certainly a crucial area of land from the Simpsons' perspective. These lands have historically been used for water access by the Simpsons and the previous owners dating back to at least 2003, a point which was acknowledged in the email correspondence between the previous owner and the Cribbets, including reference to an agreement or an understanding on the dock location. It's acknowledged that the Simpsons lands can be accessed by roads. However, the OP policy indicates the SRA will not be sold to the riparian landowner where it is used for access by an adjoining landowner. This policy does not make reference to rights of public access, only access by an adjoining property owner. It's my opinion that selling these lands to the Cribbets would not conform to the official plan based on the use of the area for access by the Simpsons and previous owner. Secondly, the sale of the area in question based on the Cribbet proposal would have a negative impact on the Simpsons for a number of reasons, including securing an alternative location for the replacement dock will incur additional expense for tree clearing and earthworks for access. This would also offend policy 13.04.6 of the official plan on water quality, which states, and I will paraphrase, the area between the shoreline and any development on the lot be maintained in its natural state in order to preserve a buffer of natural vegetation. The restrictions would require that the setback be altered or disturbed as little as possible, and trees should not be cut nor vegetation cleared within it so that it function as a natural shoreline buffer, except for access, and in brackets, a reasonable wide pathway to the shoreline, safety, or selective cutting or limiting for reasonable provision of views from dwellings or cabins. This policy aims to minimize disturbances along the shoreline and does have exceptions for access to the shoreline. However, the application as submitted by the Simpsons, it would eliminate the need for any additional development or tree clearing. It's my understanding that accessing these lands by the Cribbets may require additional tree clearing, which would not conform to this policy as they have an existing access to the shoreline. An alternative dock location will reduce safety, not only for the Simpsons, as the current dock is within eyesight of the main building, but an alternative location may not be visible from the main building or may require more vegetation to be removed to preserve a line of sight. Public safety may also be compromised, including boat and snowmobile traffic, a point which is acknowledged in the John Jackson report. While the Cribbets have not indicated they intend to use these lands, should they choose to, it would have a negative impact from a privacy and potentially a noise perspective given the proximity to the main building on the Simpson land. I would ask Council to consider this policy of the official plan 9.08.4 under the context of the Cribbett proposal, as I have not seen any analysis in the updated report identified under 6.1.1 of the agenda. There are very few policies in the official plan which guide shore road allowance applications, and there is no reference to this policy and how the Cribbett proposal conforms in the report. Under 6.1.2 of the agenda, this policy is referenced. However, we have come to learn this report and the conclusions made were provided to Council in error and without notification or consent from the neighbors. This report states that no part of the road allowance, when closed, will adversely impact any adjoining lands or rights of public access. This is an unfortunate error based on misunderstanding. However, we believe it is critical and which has not been given any further analysis for Council's consideration. It's my opinion that the proposal submitted by the Simpsons would conform to the official plan, as the lands are not used for access by an adjoining owner, nor have any negative impacts been identified or raised by the adjoining property owner. Lastly, I believe it is important to reiterate the fact that the official plan policies do not reference the shore road allowance following a straight line projection of side lot lines. If that were the case, an application for an official plan amendment would be required to consider any other alternative. And while a straight line projection may be a historical method for determining SRA areas, and I would agree this is logical in most cases, it also requires consent of the landowners involved. In this case, as you've heard, Council, there are a number of issues requiring consideration, including policy 908.4 of the AOP. It's my opinion that the application made by the Simpsons conforms to this policy, while the Cribbett's application would not, and in my respectful opinion, that is not a precedent the municipality should be considering. So with that, I would like to thank you for your time. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, but first I would like to pass it over to Larry Douglas.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and members of Council and other participants. It's Larry Douglas here. I am Council on behalf of Mr. and Mrs. Simpson. And I was asked to comment on this application this evening, and I reviewed the materials, and I'll try to be brief in what I'm going to talk about, but I would like to emphasize the Simpsons are what we call in lawyer terms purchasers for value without notice. And so they acquire title with things that they actually know about or things that they're deemed to know about if they're registered on the actual title to lands. And that's why we lawyers search titles to tell people what is there. And so kind of applying that principle to some of the materials I've seen in the application materials. First of all, the reference to the plan that Bob Hawkins prepared in 2003, the 42R16378, that plan is simply a survey plan. It didn't really establish any kind of legal obligation in terms of how the shore road allowance was going to be divided. And it really should not stand for a representation of that's how the people wanted it to be, because in fact, because it was never used, it could be also interpreted that the people didn't like what it was or they wanted to change it. So when you're considering that particular plan of the shore road allowance, I would simply say to have that disregarded. The other aspect I wanted to mention is there's some reference to the fact that there was some understanding of this dock located on the shore road allowance was only a temporary thing, and that it would be moved when something was done about it in terms of construction of the main cottage. Now, the interesting part about this is I thought, well, we better check the title to see if it says anything about that. And there is nothing by way of any kind of an agreement on the title that Mr. and Mrs. Simpson or their lawyers could find when they were going through to see, is there any such arrangement or understanding? So there's nothing there. Now, in terms of looking at their title, though, and this kind of backs up what you have in the municipality's materials, on both of these lots, interestingly enough, there is restrictive covenants registered. And they were done by the developer of the property back in 1999 when the original subdivision plan was registered. And I would imagine they were put there because of concerns regarding water quality, fish habitat, etc. The restrictive covenants there's only 4. They provide that there's no construction or development within 20 meters of the controlled watermark of Lake Wawashkesh to create a vegetative buffer, other than a path with a maximum width of 5 meters to the shoreline or a dock as approved by the Ministry of Natural Resources. They also require there be no vegetation removed within that 20 meters of the controlled watermark of Lake Wawashkesh. It's to be for the benefit of all property owners, and its 4th provision indicates that the covenant was to protect sensitive fish habitat, rare and threatened flora, and a provision of a phosphorus retention buffer on the lands described. So that part of what was required for both of these lots were those types of restrictions. Now, interestingly enough, when I've heard Grace Simpson speaking of the fact that historically the dock has been in this location and there is a pathway already constructed. The Hunos, the previous owners for both of our clients, daughter and parents, bought their lands very shortly after the subdivision was registered, about a year or so later. So I think it's fair to assume, and it's visible knowledge, that knowing you have the restrictive covenant on title for a pathway and then actually seeing it on your land designates where the pathway goes to the shore or the dock. And that's here. And actually both parties would have known about that and seen it, giving the particular notice that's there. The other part that I kind of noted is in going through my analysis of looking at this site for the dock has been there for 15 or so years. It must have been chosen for a reason, and that's probably the ideal site to be able to put it in. The other comment I wanted to make was the actual purpose of shore road allowances when they were originally created by the Crown were to provide public accesses, and in years ago to actually assist in the moving of commercial logging booms on our lakes to sawmills. And so there had to be some potential public access to the shores. And so it kind of leads me to my next comment. These are actually public lands. There is nothing that requires the municipality to actually close and stop them. There is nothing that I can see that says you have to apply a particular method if you're going to close and stop up a shore road allowance by a straight line method. In fact, the way our shorelines are built with peninsulas and bays, land surveyors have different calculations in terms of how they can proportionately share out frontages when they're extended out 66 feet so that they aren't, in effect, taking away frontage from one property owner to the benefit of another. They can actually bend or drop perpendicular lines to set up a fair distribution of the shoreline. And my final comment I was going to suggest is, in most cases, if a municipality was asking my advice, what do we do when we have two people objecting about us selling a piece of shore road allowance, is I would say, well, until they work it out, you don't do anything. You just leave it as is, and when the parties come to an agreement with it, you can then proceed with the passing of your bylaw to stop up and close if that's your decision to do that. So I would leave those with my comments on this particular situation I see that's developed between neighbors. It's kind of unfortunate that there is a bit of controversy because we all come here to enjoy our areas, and it's unfortunate we can't come up with a compromise. Those are my thoughts. Thank you very much.
We would be happy to answer any questions as well.
Okay, I'm going to give councilors the opportunity to ask any questions if they wish at this point.
I see, Councillor Lamb, I see in the list of motions that were sent to me this afternoon that part of my agenda information was 6.1.4, a letter from Tyler and Grace Simpson dated April the 28th, 2020. At the request of the Simpsons, this letter is to be disregarded per the email sent to Council May 15th, 2020. Why are you suggesting we disregard this email that Mr. and Mrs. Simpson?
Thank you, Councillor Lamb. This is Tyler Simpson. So when we originally applied with our application, we had a letter to council, and then when we brought Greg on board to give a professional opinion on this matter, Greg's letter, the intent of Greg's letter was to replace our initial letter. So that's the reason why it was removed.
Okay. Is it safe to say that there are other locations on the Simpson property where a dock and or a deck could be located?
So this is Grace Simpson. We would love if there was another location. Unfortunately, there isn't. There's steep rock access. There's large rocks in the shallow waters that prevent us from having boating access. We do not have a path from the main cottage to any other frontage areas. Part of our property is under the environmental protection as well. So in the photographs, you can see how we've outlined our shoreline, and we do not believe there is another location that is suitable. We certainly would have looked at moving it earlier rather than pursuing this process.
Okay, thank you. I note with interest that from Greg's, the planner's memo, that he says that this is the safest location. And no point in his letter, unless I've missed it because there's a lot of material here, does he say it's the only one. The only one making the assertion that it's the only place that you could possibly put it are you, Mr. and Mrs. Simpson, that I can read here. Is that correct?
We would say that safest and only are definitely tied together. It certainly is the safest location. It is the only location due to the other aspects that I mentioned. So steep cliffs, no access path to the front water, there is some shallow entry when the water drops to the dam level. There's large boulders that prevent us from having boating access. So we would tie safest and only together.
Okay. My next question also is to the Simpsons.
Through you, Mr. Councillor Lamb.
Yeah, sorry.
It's Barb Privet. If I could also have an opportunity to speak on that.
Well,
it's up to you, Mr. Mayor, to decide.
We'll come back in a minute. Barb, can you ask your other question, Councillor Lamb, and we'll get back to you.
Again, my question is put to the Simpsons. I read in the correspondence from our planner that at some point you applied to replace the dock and or deck with new material, and were advised by the building inspector that that wouldn't be appropriate because you didn't own the land and you didn't, I'm paraphrasing and I may not have it 100% correct, but that, indeed, he couldn't give you a building permit or a permit to do that. But you went ahead and did it anyway. So I'm wondering why you would do that in light of the information that was given to you that I'm reading here.
Sure, yeah, that's a very fair question. I think there's a misunderstanding of the timeline of events and when the new deck structure was constructed. So we contacted Mr. Irwin on February 21st, 2020 to ask if the structure size was under 110 square feet, that no building permit is required by code, and therefore the order to comply would be removed to the new deck structure. Mr. Irwin did not reply, so we followed up on February 28th to inquire if he received the communication. When he replied on March 2nd, he stated that the SRA must be owned before any structure can be built per bylaw 3.63. The new deck structure in
someone has got their noise on in the background that keeps interrupting us.
Yes, let me remind you, please, if you are not speaking, please mute your phone so it doesn't pick up any background noise. Thank you.
Sorry, Mrs. Simpson.
That's okay. So the new deck structure in question was constructed in August of 2019. So we weren't aware of this provision before the deck was actually constructed. We really messaged him to inquire about size, and I think it is a misunderstanding based on the timeline.
Okay, thank you. My final question is to Mr. Jackson, who is, I guess, our planner. I take it without going into great detail that reading your reports that there is a great amount of information that's been given by Greg and or Larry or both and Mr. Simpson that you wouldn't necessarily agree with from a planning perspective as our planning consultant, if you will, for the municipality. Is that a fair assumption?
I think I would like to underline Mr. Douglas's final comments because I know, like Mr. Douglas, he represents advice to many municipalities as well as private individuals that if there's an agreement, then it is always the best kind of way to deal with these matters. So that I do not disagree with Councillor Lamb. I think that the premise that there have the premises that have been made by the planners and the Simpsons on a number of these issues goes back to the lawfulness of the existing structures that were there historically, and my information has at least concluded, based on that information, that there's some question about that lawfulness. So you can't put a lot of credibility into the notion that, hey, it's been there, so therefore it has this entitlement. That's weak in the arguments being made. So therein lies the distinction that I think that in the world of planning, grandfathering comes as long as the particular structure or structures were lawful in their origin, so to speak. So that's the difference between what I think Mr. Barker is saying and what I've looked at in terms of this application or applications.
Finally, my last question, and I'll let other councillors get in, is to the crivets. I noticed in here, and again, there's lots of material. There was an email from the person or the previous owner of both lots, right? Kind of explaining the understanding as that person had with respect to the dock deck sort of issue, saying I haven't got it right in front of me, but basically agreeing that it wasn't, in their mind, a permanent structure or taking any issue towards the straight line extension of the property line. And so I'm not myself personally convinced that it was because people didn't know and didn't really. If they'd known, they would have taken great exception to it. I don't necessarily buy that, but anyway, that weighs has some weight in my mind. And I take it. So my question to the Kribbits is that email that you got was sort of, I think you say at one point, was an unsolicited email. Is that correct?
That's correct, Councillor Lamb. The email actually came to them as a result of the Simpsons had sent out an email to, as I mentioned in my presentation, the Simpsons had sent out an email to a number of our neighbors. And as a result of that email going out to our neighbors, one of our neighbors must have contacted Mr. Huneau, and so he responded back to us as the previous owner of the property. And certainly he's been on the lake for years, not just in that location, but is pretty familiar with building docks in awkward and difficult places. And he was pretty confident that he says it in his email that there were other locations for a dock.
And Mrs. Kribbit, why were there areas on that email that were blacked out? Was that for privacy information or something? I didn't get that. Like there were large areas where a black marker had been.
That's correct. Yes, Councillor Lamb, they were just comments. We redacted them because they were just comments to us that really weren't relevant to this discussion.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Barb, did you? I cut you off earlier. Did you have something else you were going to say in response to the question about alternative? I think it was in regard to alternative dock locations on the Simpson property.
Yes, to you, Mr. Mayor. It's really just reiterating the point that Lake Washcash is not particularly known for friendly spots for constructing docks, and the topography of their land is certainly not sheer rock, as we see sheer high rock as we see in many spots around the lake, where in spite of that, individuals have been able to construct safe docks. So it was really just that comment that from our neighbor who indicated that his intention had been to move, obviously his intention was to move up the dock. He used that area where the dock, where the old dock was, they used that for swimming as well, which would be neither here nor there regardless of the property line. But it was really just to say he was confident that there were other locations for docks. He's had a lot of experience on the lake and certainly knows how to build docks in much more complicated spots, safe docks, than that lot.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to ask if other councillors have questions that they would like to raise at this point.
Mr. Mayor, it's Tyler Simpson. Can we, before we hop into other councillors, can we have Larry, our lawyer, comment on the notion and comments from the previous owner?
Well, I'm sorry, but he's already commented that we're an hour into the meeting just about, and we don't, I have to keep things moving a bit here. So I think, I'd really like not to get into, the same people sort of repeating their arguments over again. I'd like to if I may, give councillors an opportunity to ask other councillors an opportunity to ask questions that they might have.
Mr. Mayor, Joe McEwen.
Yes, go ahead, Joe.
Yes, I'll refer to Mr. Douglas' comments, and he kind of nailed down what one of my thoughts was after reading through the myriad of information here. And I certainly appreciate where both sides are coming from. It's complex, and there are a lot of personal interests and so on and so forth. But I was involved in one of these personally, the straight line scenario, and as it turned out, it had to be either straight line or worked out to an agreement between owners, and in that case, it actually was. And I worked for a surveyor years ago, and we got into a couple of these situations, and it got complicated to the point that one got dropped, as I recall. So the straight line scenario is not to be taken lightly. And as has been mentioned in some correspondence here, that it could be precedent setting if we start just bending the line to accommodate a building or accommodate a dock. So that's more of a comment. And then the information, I guess we can't put a whole lot of weight on. Some personal information coming through to defend the properties, or Mrs. Kribbitz, I guess, by Mr. Hanal, previous owner. And I'm sure it was quite different at the line junctioning when he and his daughter owned it. There'd be mutual agreements and understandings, and certain things would get done there. I have one question. I'm not sure who would answer this, but at what point in time, like was it 2019 that the little building got put up, which was kind of on the lot line and on the Kribbit property in error? Was that just very recently? Because when I see the plan, the survey plans from Mr. Hawkins, and then the shoreline extrapolation from that, it's certainly been on record and it's been there to observe, although it wasn't properly documented in registry, I guess, as ownership. And it can kind of nullified, as Mr. Douglas mentioned, but the information certainly was there to show that the straight line scenario should have been conformed to, I would have hoped. But anyway, the question is, how long ago did the little building go on the property?
Hi, this is Tyler Simpson. Which little building are you referring to?
There's one that's on the on a sketch here, and it shows it part way over the line, just on the straight line scenario. I'm looking. I guess.
Are you talking about closer to water or up by the property line?
It'd only be about 75 feet or so up from the water, I believe.
Can you reference what page in the agenda package you're looking at?
Well, I've got Schedule B I'm looking at, which I thought was the correct. Now again, too many pieces of paper floating around here.
You're looking at attachment B, is that correct?
I thought it was B, Mr. Mayor, but I guess it's not. I don't see the building there. But I'm just curious to know if, in fact, okay, I'm looking at page 3 of Mr. Yes.
That's John Jackson.
Anyway,
There's
sorry, John.
a timber frame on metal posts referenced in Mr. Hawkins' survey sketch where he shows the proposed straight line extension as well as the second division and proposed division. It's a really small font, but it says timber frame on metal posts. Is that the structure, Councillor?
That's the structure, yes.
Yep. So this is Tyler Simpson. That is the new deck that we were going to attach the floating dock to. It's not a building. It's a new deck that will receive the new floating dock, and that was constructed in August of 2019.
So just recently, eh? Okay, thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Other councillors? Any questions?
Yes. Sure, I have a question, Councillor Gore-Matthews.
Go ahead, Councillor Gore-Matthews.
Yeah, I was just wondering, is this the last resort, us having to make a decision on this? is there any chance of neighbors, coming together and resolving this amicably? I just feel like both parties have a lot to lose and gain within this, and to make a decision based on the information that we have right now and without seeing the properties, there's a lot of he says and she says, and in terms of just for the future of these neighbors getting along, I'm just curious if we don't have to be placed in this position of deciding to do a straight line or bend the line to give somebody 4 meters. Is it possible for everyone to look at this again?
It's
We
Larry.
would be open to working with the Cribbets again.
It's Larry Douglas, if I might speak to that.
Quickly?
Yes.
You may.
Number one is you don't have to close the Shore Road allowance. There's nothing obliging you to do that. And number two is, as late as last week, I'm newer to this particular situation than Mr. Fraser, but I was instructed to send a letter to Mr. Fraser indicating the provisions that apparently were very close to agreement would be agreed to by Mr. and Mrs. Simpson. And Grace Simpson has outlined them in the meeting tonight. And so, normally speaking, municipalities don't like to get involved in the middle of disputes between owners, and they basically say, you figure it out first and then come to see us. So I guess my comment would be is my clients are open to discussion.
Okay, I'll provide an opportunity for the Cribbets to comment. I was going to because it's obviously there are if anything were to be resolved, there are two parties, and just so everyone understands the municipality's position. Several of you have stated already. You're absolutely correct. We do not. It's not our practice to arbitrate disputes amongst property owners. But on the other hand, we had given approval in principle to the purchase of the Shore Road allowance by the Cribbets a year ago, as you've heard already, and we were aware that that discussions were going on in the background, and we thought, well, this will perhaps get resolved at some point. But we were advised that by the Cribbets that there was no agreement amongst the parties, and therefore we should. They wanted to proceed with the purchase of their application, and at that particular point in time, which was just a few weeks ago, there was no other application from the Simpsons on file to purchase theirs, and so it was simply a case of, well, we can't hold them up forever. It is our practice to, we encourage property owners to purchase their Shore Road allowances, and that because that does facilitate the construction of things like docks and so on, or the attachment of docks, and so that's why we're hearing this application. We were simply advised that there was there's no further opportunity for discussion about it. So if that isn't the case, then we don't have to resolve it tonight, of course. But and again, our default position in the absence of an agreement amongst adjacent landowners is that the division of the Shore Road allowance would be a straight line extension of the property line. So, is it possible to do other things? Sure, it is, but the parties have to agree to it. We don't, unless there's a situation where we can see, that there is some other long-established use of the shore road allowance for some by the public or for some other purpose, that's the way we deal with these things. And as I think you've heard already, 90% of them are done as straight lines, so or more. So that's our position. I guess in the interest of time, I would ask the Krivets if they want to comment to this suggestion that there may be still some opportunity to resolve the issue and come up with a different proposal that both parties would accept.
To you, Mr. Mayor, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, just wasn't sure if I had the mute on or off at this point. To be honest, Mr. Mayor, at this point, the negotiations have been somewhat unpleasant, and this is why we have brought this to Council, requesting a decision from Council on this. We felt it was a more peaceful way of resolving this.
Okay, I guess that is an answer then to the question that Councillor Gorham-Matthews raised. Councillor Woods, did you have a question you wanted to ask?
No, I'm good. I think everything's been covered. I do think it's unfortunate that this is happening. I mean, at the end of the day, everyone's a neighbor. I wish that, people could sit down and talk through a problem and come up with a solution of some sort. The straight line has always been followed, and I agree that if we change that, then we will set a precedent. I'd like to see them be neighbors and try and talk it out, like even to the point where if we approve the Krivets application, if maybe they would talk to the neighbors, hopefully, they could all get along and say, okay, well, you can use that part, and it'll be like a side agreement. You don't own it, it's ours, but you can use it to get in and out of your boat. Other than that, I don't have too much to say.
All right, well, thank you. Are there any last comments by councillors? I am going to have to wrap this up and move us back into a regular session shortly.
Mayor, I just want to comment that if we were aware of the Krivets original application in May 2019, we certainly would have objected. We just found out about the application in February, so it puts us in an unfair position to hold us to a straight line projection that a previous owner agreed to. So I really think that needs to be taken into consideration. The opportunity to object was never provided to us.
Okay, well, thank you for your comment. I'm sure council will take that into consideration. Are we ready to reconvene to the regular session?
I think so.
What are we doing? Would someone like to move that then, please?
I'll move it. Councillor Lamb.
Councillor Lamb. Thank you. Seconded by?
Councillor Wood.
Okay, I got Councillor Woods first, I think.
Okay.
The Council of Municipality Whitestone hereby reconvenes into regular session at, I've got 7:51 p.m. All in favor, or anyone opposed? It's easier. Is anyone opposed to this? Any councillor, I mean? Okay, thank you. Hearing no opposition, I'll declare that motion carried. So that doesn't, of course, take the item off the agenda. We still have an opportunity to. I'm going to move my. For those of you who are looking, I'm going to try and move my screen up here a little bit. So the council has a couple of options in front of it. Option number one is to is to simply approve of the Cribbets application as it has been filed. Option number 2 would be to defer the matter to a future meeting if there is more investigation that council would like to do of the properties in question or the merits of the various arguments. It's not necessary to make a decision tonight. We could defer it to a future meeting. I guess there's also a possibility that someone wants to suggest a different division of the property that of this shore area that be used for the for approval of these applications. So anyway, that's those are the options that we have. I wonder if someone, one of the councillors, wishes to make a motion.
Councillor Lamb, well, I think we've heard from the parties. There's a lot of material here, and it is an unfortunate situation that we're kind of faced with here. But I think that the parties have reached an impasse, and I don't know what we're going to gain by, deferring and thinking about this thing for a month or something. I think we're being called upon to make a decision here. And I think each councillor has to decide, and I guess basically it comes down to, whether it's a straight line extension or whether it's, bending the curve or whatever it's called to include the whatever 100-meter area or whatever. So I think we need to make a decision, is my own personal feeling.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, go ahead, Councillor McKeown.
I just wanted to do a radio check because I had a bit of a bleep here on my phone for some reason. I have to agree with Councillor Lamb. I would hope these people can go away. And as Mr. Douglas mentioned, he and I guess Mr. Fraser, I think they had thought they could maybe pull something together on this. It sounds a little doubtful at this point. However, hopefully that if the road allowance was granted closure for the application, these people could work this out in an amicable way and become neighborly. The straight line thing is, I think, fairly significant. It has been in this municipality going back since amalgamation. I'm sure I really agree with it 100%, but it's there and everyone else has had to abide by it. So I guess I would make a motion to stick with the straight line principle.
Okay, so this is, thank you. Councillor McEwen moves, and I will read the motion just for the record for those of you who perhaps don't have it in front of you, but it reads like this: whereas an application has been filed by Robert and Barbara Cribbett for the closing and acquisition of the Shore Road Allowance fronting Lot 20, Land 42M-625 in the geographic township of Mackenzie, now the municipality of Whitestone, and whereas there are no official plan conflicts, environmental concerns, or planning issues with respect to this application, now therefore it be resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Municipality of Whitestone has no objection to the closure and acquisition of the Shore Road Allowance fronting Lot 20, Plan 42M-625, geographic township of Mackenzie, as applied for by Robert and Barbara Cribbett, based on the straight line extension of the property line as on reference plan number 42R-16378, which was deposited on May 13, 2003, and subject to 1, the provision that only the lands above the controlled high water mark be available for stopping up and transfer and 2, payment of all associated costs and fees. So is that the motion that you're making, Councillor McEwen?
Yes, in essence it is, Mr. Mayor. I wish we could have more assistance to the 2 property owners. I feel badly for each of them, but hopefully they can pull it together either through their local lawyers or through neighborly relationships. But that's the resolution. Thank you.
Is
I'll
there a
second
seconder for that motion?
Yeah, I'll second it, Councillor Lamb.
Councillor Lamb has seconded. Okay, further discussion by councillors.
Sure. I'd just like to point out that, if we pass this, then we're essentially giving all the power in negotiating an agreement to the Cribbets, and the Simpsons are at a real disadvantage in having to ask them for usage of this land that they've typically been used to accessing. I'm just not sure that it's fair to everyone, considering that when this was first presented to us, that not everyone was informed about it. So other people have had more time to prepare for this than other parties.
Okay, a fair comment. Just as a question, and I'm just going to ask this question and not open up a whole round of discussion. But over what period of time have the discussions or negotiations been going on between the Simpsons and the Cribbets in regard to this matter? Like, how long has this? Maybe the person to ask would be our planning assistant or our CAO clerk. Can you just check the records and see how long it has been they've had to be discussing this matter?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this is CAO Clerk Henry. I don't have an answer because some of the discussions probably went on without the municipality knowing. What I do know is that when Council approved in principle last May, the next step for the Cribbets was to go and get a survey because they were one of the properties that hadn't been surveyed in 2003. So off they went and obtained a survey. And my understanding is that they had an inkling around Thanksgiving with respect to where the bars for the straight line projection would be, but they didn't get their final report from the surveyor until around Christmas. So my expectation is somewhere between Thanksgiving and Christmas of last year, the discussion started between the Simpsons and the Cribbets. And we'd probably have to reach out to both parties to confirm that, but that's my sense of the timeline of activities. That even though Council approved in principle last May, by the time the surveyor actually got out to do the work, it was many months later.
So I will ask the parties then: is the information the clerk has just provided is correct or not?
This is Grace Simpson. The timeline is definitely correct. The first time that we heard from the Cribbets around the proposal was February 14th, 2020.
I'll ask the Cribbets. Is that your statement as well, or?
Sorry about that. I'm just certainly in October. I heard from the Simpsons regarding the survey stakes. So that was our first conversation about it. But in terms of actually talking about the shore road allowance, etc., that was following a couple of emails, and then February the 14th, we did email the Simpsons about the shore road allowance. Yes.
Okay, so I'm just trying to establish, for the benefit of Councillor Gorham Matthews' question, how long this the parties have been attempting back and forth to get the matter resolved. Anyway, are there other comments or questions by councillors? Okay, hearing no questions, I would like to call the question on the motion that is in front of us, which I read to you, which is essentially, I'll paraphrase without reading it all again, but it is a straight line. It's approving the Crivets application with a straight line extension of the property line. So I'm going to ask the clerk to call the names of the councillors, and I will record your vote on the matter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Gorham Matthews?
No.
Councillor Joe Lamb?
Yes, I agree.
Councillor Joe McEwen?
Yes, I agree.
Councillor Brian Woods?
Yes.
Leaving conference.
John Jackson.
Mayor Comrie?
Okay, thank you. I guess it doesn't really matter at this point, but I will agree as well. So I'll declare the motion carried. Thank you, councillors. That now brings us to the second planning item that we had, which was it was the application by the Simpsons, and we could approve the application. We could approve that application in principle. Well, I guess we actually have a survey. Am I correct? Am I correct, Madam Clerk? We do have a...
Yes, Mr. Mayor. The Simpson survey, which is Part 8 of 42R 16378, was done back in 2003. You're correct.
Okay. Well, can I get a motion? Can I get a mover and seconder then for this motion under item 6.2, which is to close and convey the shore road allowance for the Simpsons, Lot 19.
Mr. Mayor, it's Larry Douglas. I'm sorry, and I apologize for interjecting. I might want to speak with my clients about that. Mr. and Mrs. Simpson, are you there?
Yes, we would appreciate connecting with Larry.
I'm suggesting you might wish to have it deferred to the next meeting.
That's a great idea.
If that is if that's your wish, certainly we can do that.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay then. That takes us then from the planning matters. Thank you to everyone for your participation. Appreciate it. I know it's a difficult issue.
Thank you.
So if we could move on, then that would take us, our next item, I believe. Long pause here is me trying to move the agenda down for those who might be looking at the screen. We have a consent agenda under item 9, which consists of 2 items: the adoption of the regular council minutes for the meeting of May 4th.
Larry Douglas.
Leaving conference.
Doug Hickey.
Leaving conference.
Craig Barker.
Leaving conference.
Tyler and Grace Simpson.
Okay, thank you.
Leaving conference.
Just want,
Caller?
that's the trouble with our audio conference facilities, that when people leave and join, we get a little interruption. But anyway, that's all right. I'll talk over it. The second item on the consent agenda is unfinished business. Again, we will give people an opportunity if there are any things that you wish to pull out of that.
Leaving conference.
We can talk about it, but I would like a mover and seconder. Be it resolved that the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone hereby receives and or approves the items contained in the consent agenda dated May 19th, 2020. Can I get a mover and seconder, please?
I'll move.
Thank you. Councillor Garn-Matthews.
I'll second. Councillor Woods.
Thank you. Is there any discussion, any corrections to the minutes, or any discussion that you want to have about the unfinished business? Hearing none, I will ask for your approval. Anyone opposed to approving the consent agenda? Hearing none, I will declare it approved. Thank you very much. And no matters rising.
Leaving conference.
Bob and Barb Cribbett.
Next item is accounts payable. Can I get a mover that the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone hereby approves accounts payable in the amount of $119,935.15 and payroll in the amount of $22,325.08 for payment?
I'll make the motion, Councillor Lamb.
Thank you, Councillor Lamb. Seconded by?
I'll second Councillor McEwen.
Councillor McEwen, thank you. Any discussion on any of those items? All right. I guess I will. I guess we will call the roll if we can, Madam Clerk, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Beth Gorham-Matthews.
Yes.
Councillor Joe Lamb.
Yes.
Councillor Joe McEwen.
Yes.
Councillor Brian Wood.
Yes.
Mayor Comrie.
Yes. Thank you very much. That motion is carried. No, we're at bylaws, and we do in fact have a bylaw, but we're going to bring it up later on under another item. So I will just let this. I'll just let this one go by for the moment. We have staff reports, and the first one is from our Chief Building Official, Tyler Irwin. It's a report on building department update and activities for the period of January 1st to March 31st of this year. So I'll get a motion to receive it for information. Would someone move, please?
I'll move.
Councillor Woods.
Councillor Woods moves. Seconded by?
I'll second Councillor McEwen.
Councillor McEwen, thank you very much. I give an opportunity for Tyler to make any comments that he would like on his report.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council and everybody else that's there. Can everybody hear me?
We can.
Yeah. You can? Okay. Yeah, so all things considered, it actually is, we actually are picking up pretty good. You know, it's always a little bit slow in the winter months and that sort of thing. But just a little sneak peek into Q2, like with this COVID stuff on, we're ahead already by 8 applications, and we're getting some big permits, and so which is a good thing. So it's just kind of tied into the first quarter. The first quarter is kind of tied into this these applications that we've been getting. Anyways, we did still receive quite a few applications and stuff, which I had to hang on to. I could take them to the stage of ready just to issue the permit, but as per the province's order, I wasn't able to release them. And as of today, we were able to do that, so which is good. People have been very patient, which is a good thing. And it looks like things seem to be moving right along again. So I guess I think that's it for now.
Okay, thank you. Are there questions for our CBO?
Councillor Lamb, I have a couple. Thanks, Tyler. Another
Please go ahead.
Good report. I have a couple questions and a comment. Outstanding permits. I understand what you're saying about the records management system. You'll be able to get a consolidated listing of outstanding permits will be developed and prioritized for follow-up. Do you have any kind of estimated timing for that, Tyler, when you might see that list come out?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Basically, it's been started, so I believe that I think most of 2019 was entered. So one of the office admin had started, and in the slower times, I've started on the 2017 year, and I believe 2020 was started as well. So we still have quite a ways to go. There's quite a bit of researching the files and seeing at what stage they were last at. And but we are moving along with it. So it'll probably be next winter again. I'll have a good chunk of it done, if not all. So that's what my hope is.
Yeah, because this is something that for years we've talked about needs to be cleaned up, and I appreciate your efforts in this area. But once we can put this thing behind us and either get people having completed the building permits and or abandoning them or whatever, we can clear the list and get looking into the future versus always looking in the rear view mirror. So second comment I have is in January someone built a $4,000 garage. I wonder if you can tell me where I can buy a $4,000 garage, because I probably would like to buy one.
Yeah.
It just seems like a really strange amount because there's a garage in March that was put up, and it was $32,000, which sort of sounds more in the ballpark. So why a $4,000 garage in January? I don't want any specifics as to who or anything like that, but it hit me as strange, I guess.
Sure. Yeah. That's a good question. Through you, Mr. Mayor. So it's actually the sheds and the garages get put into the same category, and so what it is actually a shipping container. Yeah. No, it is deceiving, for sure. Good question.
Okay, good. Well, maybe we should separate out containers, because I'd be interested to see how many containers are in the municipality in future reports. Just put containers as a separate line. My third is really a question that can't be answered tonight, but I know that there are a number of situations in the municipality whereby we've either posted for demolition of buildings or compliance orders, if you will, and I don't know how many of those kinds of cases there are, and how many are outstanding, and how many are, for instance, at litigation or heading to litigation, and again, I don't want specifics as to who or anything like that, but is there a and maybe the CAO wants to comment on that, is there a way that council can get some appreciation of that kind of statistic, even if it's enclosed? I'm sure it would have to be. And again, I don't want specifics or identification or anything. I'm just looking more for how many kind of outstanding cases do we have?
Could I answer that?
Sure.
Hello? Yeah.
Absolutely. Go ahead, please.
I don't want to cut anybody off. So, through you, Mr. Mayor. So, again, another good question. So, we do have some orders issued. We've had some orders that have been complied with, and I do have a few going before the courts. Now, with this COVID, as everybody knows, it's really made an impact on a lot of things. So, the courts have been shut down and that sort of thing. So, it's all kind of on the back burner until everything gets going again. I'm not 100% sure on the time just because with the backlog of the courts and that, but I have been in contact with our prosecutor, and he does have some of the information ahead that we're proceeding with the charges. So it's something I definitely could do and probably add on my next quarterly report. So Q2, I likely could add something, with how many orders that I've issued in the year and what has been complied with and what hasn't been. So some of them do take quite a while, and if a person so chooses not to comply, it can sometimes be a couple years or more, depending on how long it takes to get through the courts. So, but I'm sure I can do something, add a little bit of a list or something to the quarter, the second quarter report.
Thank you.
Mr. Merrick, Joe McKeon?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Tyler, not so much private roads, but we have a couple of official plan amendments that we've been looking at, and one is land use on vacant lots and trailers and campers. I understand that it's very much in limbo right now in terms of, I guess, recording and listening and doing really anything from your perspective. I know going around the municipality, there are several trailers that are just into little vacant parts of properties now, and presumably they don't pay taxes as buildings and all that kind of thing, no building permits. Are you, in essence, waiting for council to proceed with this zoning plan amendment, official plan amendment?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So, I definitely do get a lot of questions in regards to the trailers and if they can be on the lots prior to building and that sort of thing. Some of the property owners just want to do maybe some brushing or site prepping. Some owners like to get the septic system in a couple of years prior to building and that sort of thing. So I do get a lot of those questions. But basically at this point, I just tell them it's not permitted. If they do install one, then it just kind of it's directed to bylaw at this point. But I honestly think it would be beneficial to allow them. And there'd have to be some sort of a permit or something in place to make sure that that it doesn't end up with 6 trailers and a bunch of little shacks and stuff. But I do get a lot of questions on that.
So do you feel there are some sitting there that have not been addressed in terms of the justification for them being on site and that kind of thing? Or do you think they're pretty much up front with you? Do you feel fairly comfortable with the numbers?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I do believe there's probably some that are just put on the lots. And I don't think, I don't have the zoning bylaw right in front of me, but I don't think with how it's written right now that I'm not even sure that bylaw can really enforce it. I don't think we really have the trailer bylaw right now, but I do believe that there is some that probably ask and don't bother installing one. But there is definitely people that go ahead. So I would think it's probably a bit of both.
Okay, so it'd be an advantage for us trying to move forward with this, say, in the next calendar year or something.
Yes, I think that would be correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions on this report? All right, I'll call the question to receive the report. And anyone who is not in favor of receiving it for information, please indicate right now. Hearing none, I will declare that motion carried and the report is received. The next one is item 12.2, which has to do with
leaving
the sound
conference.
system.
Tyler?
Thank you, Tyler. Good night. It has to do with the audiovisual system in the Dunchurch Community Center. And the hope here to award a contract. And I can give you a little bit of background on that, but before I do that, I guess what I'll ask for is a motion that the Council of the Corporation of the Municipality of Whitestone receives report admin 2020-04 audiovisual upgrades for the Dunchurch Community Center, and that Council award a single source contract to Acclaim Sound and Lighting North Bay for the provision of sound equipment and AV upgrades at the Dunchurch Community Center in the amount of $30,772.25 plus HST, and that the mayor and CAO clerk be authorized to execute all necessary contract documents. Can I get a mover and seconder for this, please?
I'll move it.
Moved by Councillor Gorham Matthews. Thank you. Seconded by?
I'll second it, Council. Oh, sorry.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Lamb. Thank you.
No.
Yeah.
Was it Councillor McEwen or were you, or Councillor Lamb?
Councillor Lamb, but yeah, it doesn't matter.
All right. All right, Councillor Lamb. Thank you. I've got you. Just to fill you in, you have a report in front of you, and I certainly don't intend to read it or go over it. But this, as you know, goes back to it's been going on for a good chunk of a year, I suppose. And you're all aware, of course, that that our AV system, our microphones and so on that are there now are not working at all. And so there is basically no sound system unless we use one of the portable speakers and microphones that we use for some things. And so there's been a project underway for a while to look at possible alternatives and to figure out what we really need and want. And Councillor McEwen and I have been working on that with some assistance from Paula Macri, and so from the clerk as well. And so we've been going back and forth with this particular company in North Bay who actually supplied the system that McKellar uses in their council chamber. So that's and they have made a couple of visits to our site to talk about what we could do with it and that kind of thing and what sort of equipment they've proposed. Originally, if you go back even before that, you'll recall that we did have some difficulty getting proper response from the person who had installed the previous system and was supposedly looking after it. So we felt the need to get a new vendor. In any case, there are, I guess, two wrinkles to this. One is, well, you'll remember we had in last year's budget a sum of I think $20,000 to do this, and we had some additional sums for some related items that were kind of part of it. But we now believe that we have a reliable quote for what it is we want, and it turns out to be, as you see, in just slightly in excess of $30,000. And $30,000 is our threshold for a single source without the approval of council. So essentially, we're asking two things. One is approval to proceed with the project. When we're asking to receive the report, of course, which you can do without doing anything else, I guess. But that you would agree to proceed with the project and to waive that 30,000 threshold to tender to award a single source contract. So those are the asks. I would be happy to, or Councillor McEwen, I'm sure would be happy to answer any questions that you might have from a technical point of view about it. The way I see this is that we are laying a foundation for the future. There is some. This doesn't get us a fully automated hall for video and everything. We still would have some additional expenses related to possibly putting up a permanent screen and so on. But this lays the groundwork for that by doing the necessary wiring, and there is a fair bit of wiring that has to be done. Unfortunately, it's surface wiring that has to be done neatly and concealed in wire mold and that sort of thing, so it doesn't wreck the decor in the community center. So that would, if we proceed with that would get done all at once, and we will be in a position once we get back to actually having physical meetings in the hall. We would have a sound system, and we would have the ability to display some materials we can use. We can still use a portable screen and a data projector as we have in the past, and we can put up we can put the sound through the audio system. So, and it would also allow us to operate things like some of the youth activities and the dances and that sort of thing that happen certainly more easily. Anyway, I'll stop with that and have some discussion.
Yes, Councillor Lamb. First of all, I want to thank the Mayor and Councillor McEwen for the work and time and effort that you've put into this. I'll gladly support the motion to go forward. You answered, Mr. Mayor, my main question was, eventually, whether it's a year or 2 or 5 years from now, it's going to become, more and more commonplace to have, audio-visual kind of presentation of councils live, right? And I just want to make sure, and I think you've answered it, that this system sort of builds on it, so that if we get to the point where we say let's kind of go video live or whatever, we don't have to say but we put that other system in, so we got to take $10,000 out of the 30 and restart that over again in order for us to do it a video type thing. And so I'm satisfied you've answered that, and if I've got that incorrect, then speak up. The other comment that I'll make is, I think in a way, if there's anything good coming, and I don't think there's very much coming good out of it, COVID-19, but the way that our meetings are held now, I think have a great lesson to be learned. Right, there are people now that can tune in, if you will, and in our community, no matter where they are, right, as long as they have a telephone. They're able to kind of to check in, and I think we're getting far more participation in our meetings than we would if it was, the old way. And so I don't know, how we can, and nor is it, necessarily a big debate tonight, but how we can build a feature like that in to, you know, when we go back into the community hall, some sort of audio feature where people can either tune in or go to something and just even listen audio-wise on a live basis, right? I'm not saying they have to be interactive as we are now, but I would really like to see us be able to carry that on, because I think that's a really great communication tool for us as we go forward. So those are my comments, and again, thank you for both of your hard work and staff on what I think is an awfully important project.
Well, let me just say thank you for your comments. Your assumptions are correct, and certainly we have in mind how I think things will be done in the future, and we'll have more situations where we have a combination of people present in the room and people present outside, and they will need the ability to see and hear each other effectively. And we don't have everything on day one to do that, but we can. That would all be upward compatible from what we have right now. So we've got that sort of in mind as an end goal.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Just a comment.
With
a claim, we go back, 2018, I guess, maybe some into 2017. Paul's husband works in North Bay, and he was friends, and he's put in the speakers and electronic systems. So I feel pretty good about dealing with these folks. I've talked to them multiple times, and Mr. Mayor, I know you carried the ball on getting the contract and following up and make sure we had everything we needed. And I guess I might add that McKellar, they have a pretty basic setup down there compared to what we have with our whole community center, and providing for future video as well as the audio. So anyway, I think the prices, it costs a lot of money for everything, but I remember when we had a first quote come in, and we kind of ran with our tail between our legs for a while, because it was 20-some thousand just for basics like McKellar had, and then it went up to 24 or whatever it was, and then when we asked about the audio visual complete package, it was going to be like double. So we've been kind of running back and forth and around in circles here for a couple of years on this whole thing, until this year we were able to finally put it together. So anyway, appreciate the support.
May I comment, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, you may, absolutely.
Great. I just wanted to say that I think this is a terrific step forward for us. You know, it's always been a concern when we have people with hearing impairment, and I know even, you know, trying to hear from one counselor to the other end of the table, sometimes it's been difficult when the fans are running to hear what's been said. So I think in addressing, you know, the needs of all the members in the community that want to come to the meeting and need to hear what's being said, I think this is a terrific step forward in accessibility to everyone at the meeting. And, you know, I think the other thing, too, is there's been a lot of feedback since we've been having the meetings on teleconference, how much better the recording is. You know, it's so much easier to hear. So, you know, I think that's another positive step forward in getting this system, is that, you know, recording the meetings will be so much easier for people to listen and hear what was being said without a lot of feedback and background noise in the recording. So I think this is a very positive step for us.
Thank you. Any other comments? No, Councillor Woods? No?
No, I'm good. I'm happy with it, especially for the hearing impaired. I mean, that kind of hits close to home for me, right? My dad always would like to get involved in the meetings, but his big gripe is he's stone deaf, right? And he can't really hear. And like Beth was saying, we do have a hard time, like even with Joe and Beth at one end of the table and Joe and I at the other end of the table. Once that furnace kicks on, you have a real time hearing anything, really. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, it'd be a welcomed addition, and definitely a step in the right direction as far as accessibility.
Okay, thank you. Madam Clerk, is there anything I need to, you wanted to add to this, or I should have asked you this before, but.
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I certainly helped write the report, but the majority of the work was done by you and Councillor McEwen, of course. There's a discussion of the shortfall in funding. However, recently we found that one of the projects in Public Works, which was budgeted at $5,000, which was the perimeter survey for the gravel pit, that's no longer needed. We discovered there actually is a survey. We'd looked for a number of years and couldn't find one. As often happens, there's ups and downs when we do the budgeting. So the shortfall is not going to be a problem for this project.
Okay, thank you very much. Can I get you then to call the roll, please, for the vote?
I will, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Bethgoran Matthews?
Yes.
Councillor Joe Lamb?
Yes.
Councillor Joe McEwen?
Yes.
Councillor Brian Woods?
Yes.
And Mayor George Comrie?
Yes. Well, thank you very much, folks. That's that's something that we can get on with. Hopefully, before the community center gets occupied again. So that brings us to item 13. We have a number of items here, and some of them are, I have to say, more than item 13.1 are COVID-19 related, but perhaps we can just work our way down through them in order. And well, sorry, I'm trying to think what we were going to discuss in this one that wasn't broken out. I believe the CAO clerk has a report on some things that are happening relating as far as staff and so on is concerned. I guess that's what we were going to do under 13.1. Am I right, Michelle?
Yes, that is correct, Mr. Mayor, and I'll be brief. I briefly mentioned it in the council report last Friday, but I wanted to let council know that we're looking at ways to bring our staff back to the office. More particular, Tyler, who, as you know, we'd created an office for him in the community center, and it was dismal for him because the Wi-Fi connectivity was very poor. So there was many hours in the day where he couldn't connect. And even though things were slow, there was things that he was trying to do, which was some of the records management on the downtime, and he was simply unable to do that. So we've come up with a plan whereby we're purchasing some plexiglass panels, and so each person in the office will have their own space behind plexiglass. Of course, Pat and I have an office, but Tyler and the other folks don't. And Tyler himself is going to install these for us. They're going to hang from the ceiling. And so that creates an element of safety, and we all wear masks in the common areas now, which is the hallway, the lunchroom, the photocopy room, because as you can expect, there's not many places in the office where we can be 6 feet apart from each other. We walk down the hallway to the lunchroom, there's not 6 feet between the person walking and the folks that are at their desks. So we're looking at ways to accommodate and start up the business of the municipality that things slow down a bit as we haven't been fully staffed, and of course Tyler's been at the community center, Pat's been working at home, and that's been a challenge as well with connectivity. So just an update, and we haven't got all the details worked out, but we're trying to make sure that people are safe, they feel comfortable coming into work. It's a very small office area, as you know, and the more people we get in here, the more general concern is there is, but we're doing everything we can to make people feel safe to come to work. So that's just an update on our office environment. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you for that report. Are there any questions? I don't think we need a motion to receive it, but are there any questions that you have for Michelle on what she just said?
I just have one question.
Yeah, please.
When we're installing the plexiglass, are we being proactive and putting some at the front desk as well, so that when we're in a position to reopen the office, that the person working at the front desk is able to deal with the public again?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. We won't be doing it right away, but it's our secondary consideration. And you're right. We have to think. We are doing some renovations here, which require some discussion and some design and organization. But that's a couple of months away. So you're right. There has to be a piece of plexiglass between the people that attend to customers at the counter and the folks that eventually the public will come back in. So that hasn't been forgotten. It's just not our primary goal at this point in time.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. We'll move on to item 13.2. Review of penalty and interest for the second tax installment, which is due on May 28th. You will recall that we waived penalty and interest on the first installment of unpaid municipal taxes very close to the day they were due on March 26th. And we said we would revisit the subject again before the second installment was due on May 28th. So that's what we're doing, and that's how this ended up on the agenda tonight. I have a motion, and I mean, I think there are options for what council could do about this. I have a motion, which I think you have in front of you as 13.2, and it basically says, okay, the paper I've got it on says 13.1, but anyway, I've moved it up on the screen slightly. It says that the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone does hereby extend waiving of penalty and interest charges on the first installment of unpaid 2020 municipal taxes that were due March 26, 2020, from May 28, 2020 until August 27, 2020. So that's for another couple of months, extending that waiver. And that the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone does hereby waive penalty and interest charges on the second installment of unpaid 2020 municipal taxes due May 28, 2020, until the first installment of the final tax bill is due on August 27th. And that these waivers do not apply to unpaid municipal taxes that were due prior to March 26, 2020, and that Council consider the need to extend these waivers prior to August 27th, 2020. So that's kind of the, if you like, the most generous, most forgiving package, if you will. Is there someone who would like to move that motion?
I'll make that motion.
Councillor Gorman-Matthews. Moved, seconded by Councillor Woods. I'll open it up for discussion. Maybe first, I did ask the clerk and treasurer a question before when we were talking about putting this on the agenda, and that is basically what percentage of the first installment of taxes did we actually receive, or what portion did we not receive, whichever you prefer, just so we can get a sense of, how much this is being taken advantage of. Now, keep in mind, by the way, before she answers, keep in mind that we we didn't do the waiver until just before they were due. So I think a lot of people had already paid their taxes by that time. There might be more folks who would, if this passes, who would take advantage of it in the second installment. But, Madam Clerk, can I ask you do you have an answer to my question?
Yes, I do, Mr. Mayor, and I can also compare it to 2019, which is of interest.
Yes.
So this year, 85% of the taxes due were paid on the due date, by the due date, not on, but by that due date. So that's 85% were paid. In 2019, 84% were paid. So virtually the same amount, 1% difference isn't significant. And I think, as you mentioned, it probably has a great deal to do with the fact that, people typically don't pay on the day. They pay in advance. They send post-dated checks in. So by the time the decision was made by council, many people had already made that commitment or were in the process of making that commitment. And, of course, we're just newly into the COVID-19, not knowing or, understanding completely the impact it would have on our economy and, people's employment. So those are the numbers I have for you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Comments, questions from councillors?
Yeah, I think this will be a welcome relief to many people. I think if you'd told people back in March that they'd still not have their businesses open now, coming on June, they would be gobsmacked. But here we are. So, I think this will be a welcome relief to those that need it, and that those that don't will still pay their taxes on time just to have it done with. So I think this is a great move for us, and it will really support the community.
Any other comments?
Councilor McEwen, I'm just totally supportive of it, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Well, are you ready for the question? Going once? All right. I'll ask the clerk again if she doesn't mind to just call the roll here, so we record the vote.
I will, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. Councillor Beth Gorham-Matthews.
Yes.
Councillor Joe Lamb.
Yes.
Councillor Joe McEwen.
Yes.
Councillor Brian Woods.
Yes.
Mayor George Comrie.
Yes. Okay, thank you very much. That motion is carried, and I trust that staff will prepare a communication to let people know. They'll get a little bit more advance notice this time around than they did the last one. This brings us to our favorite subject, which is boat launches and public access points. And the resolution that is here, again, this is just a suggestion. I don't know if anybody has any other things that they feel we should be doing, but basically it is a motion to maintain the status quo as per our decision on April 20th, and to reevaluate them on a go-forward basis as necessary. So this is essentially a no change position on boat launches. So we're not preventing anybody from using them. We've got the signs up that say they're closed to ratepayers, they're closed to. They say ratepayers only. Let's be precise. And a reminder about the need to physical distance and use at your own risk. And so that's, I guess it's just testing to see if we want to continue that, or I suppose that alternatively we could say that it's business as usual and we could take signs down. But
Mr. Mayor, can I make a comment?
Yes, you may.
With respect to the actual docks, there are only a couple places that docks are really of assistance to folks putting their boats in. And as I recall, we had a few pretty strong opinions voiced a week or so ago about not being able to access the boat on the side of a dock, for instance. Maybe the lead into the main dock wasn't put in place or just whatever. So the big thing I took out or came out of that with was a potential safety issue.
Mm-hmm.
Not being able to put your boat in and pull it over and hold it to the dock and
Yeah.
get a little bit of stuff in. So I don't see an advantage of not having the dock available. From getting too close to your neighbor and all that kind of thing. I think it's pretty remote if it's just 2 or 3 people putting their own boat in. So I would think the dock when possible and the launch go hand in hand.
Mr. Mayor, if I might comment, Councillor Lamb.
Yeah.
I was going to bring up the same point that Councillor McEwen brings up, and when it comes to the dock down at the community, near the fire hall there, I'm sort of concerned. Obviously marinas are open, so people are releasing boats and that kind of stuff. But I am concerned that the height of the steel dock that we have in is quite high, and I am concerned about the safety of people, trying to put their boat in and then trying to, step from that permanent, structure into their boat, that someone's going to get injured. And I really don't see a problem with putting the dock there. I really don't know the other launches. There was some, so I don't see the problem with putting a dock out at the main area. I guess the park is still closed in the sense that we can't put floats out and open the beach, if I've got that correct. But I don't know the other areas. For instance, up at Wawashkesh, there was concern. Now that I guess Ed Bennett can obviously put boats in the water and that sort of thing, is that dock not out there, and is that a safety issue or not? And that's not for me to answer. I don't know it as well as I do the dock down here at Whitestone. So, but anyway, so I'm in agreement with Councillor McEwen.
Well, I think what I'm hearing is maybe that we should remove that bullet point out of the motion that talks about putting out the docks, or replace it to say the municipality will put out its docks. And really the only docks that we there's the only one that we put out ourselves is the one by the fire hall in Benchurch. The 2 docks that are in the Narrows at one at Indian Narrows and one at Bennett's Bay at Wawashkesh, they actually get put there, interestingly enough, by Ed Bennett at the request of the Wawashkesh Conservation Association, who have an agreement with us to maintain them, right? And so, and you'll be interested to know that after all that protest about us wanting to barricade those landings, the executive of the Conservation Association asked Ed Bennett to put those docks in. So they've changed their position on the whole thing. And I haven't heard back from him as to what I thought maybe he would be sufficiently busy that he would want to do it. But there were a number of people on Wawashkesh who contacted me and said, you really should put the docks there. It makes it safer to use. And my response to them was, well, if you want to get out to the dock, you're still going to have to walk through about a foot of water and with high boots or your bare feet or something, you roll up your fence and because you can't step from dry land onto the concrete abutment, right? Or you couldn't as of last weekend. But in any case, I think what I'm hearing is that the municipality will put out docks. I'll take out the we. Would you be happier if that's what the motion said?
I would support
We'll put out its docks.
Yeah, I support
I'd support it.
Yeah, we support using the landings. I think we have to have from a safety point of view, where at all possible when the water gets down and when they're accessible, to have them hand in hand.
Yeah. Okay,
the only other comment, Mr. Mayor, that I had, and it's a small one, was someone called me and said, can I put my boat in? I'm a ratepayer. It said of Whitestone, and they said, no, of McKellar. And I said, well, no. So they said, well, you really should say Whitestone ratepayer, right? So, or open only to Whitestone ratepayers. I said, well, I don't know. So anyway, that's the only other comment I heard on that. So I'm not suggesting we go, send the signs out for redoing, but anyway.
Yeah, they do. There is a Whitestone logo on the original sign, but that was already, Doug Hickey already pointed that out to us, as you recall, that it should have said Whitestone ratepayers only.
Well, maybe that's where I heard it from. So anyway.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, so can I get a mover? We're talking about this, but can I get a mover and seconder
I'll move it.
Moved by Councillor, seconded by.
I can second that, Councillor Woods.
Councillor Woods, that the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone does hereby maintain the status quo for public boat launches landings as per the April 22nd, I got the status quo. Well, anyway, as per the April 20th, 2020 Council resolution, whereby public boat launches landings are closed to non-ratepayers. The public boat launches landings will not be physically blocked, but I'm going to take it out of here because it doesn't read properly. So we'll say and that, or maybe it should be but that. I guess it should be but that the the municipality, I just put that docks will be placed. How about that? That docks will be placed. Sorry, and that the above cancellations, closures, protocols be reevaluated by council if deemed necessary. So you got two that's. That the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone hereby maintain the status quo for public boat launches / landings as per the April 20th, 2020 Council resolution, whereby there's 2 bullet points. The first one is public boat launches landings are closed to non-ratepayers. Whitestone, right? 2, the public boat launches landings will not be physically blocked, but that docks will be placed, and that the of cancellations, closures, protocols be reevaluated by council if deemed necessary. Is that okay?
Fine by me.
You all right with that? Anybody opposed to that motion? Hearing none, I'm going to call it as carried.
I would ask that the CAO try to get the dock in as soon as they can, because there'll be probably more people wanting to put it in as the weekend comes to us. So,
thank you. I'll speak to our
thank you,
superintendent. Yeah.
Okay, 13.4 is our public water tap, and people have been asking about the public water tap. We did have, just as an aside, we had a little technical discussion about how to make it work so that it doesn't splash water on the ground. And staff are investigating that to see what they need to do to make it work the same way as the one at McDougall, after which it is modeled. But the McDougall one doesn't have an actual faucet that you could attach a garden hose to. It has just a copper spout that shoots a stream of water straight into your jug, and not all over the ground or all over your shoes or whatever. But that's really a secondary issue. The primary issue is, do you think we should open it up to people? Folks are asking. Now that
Councillor Lamb, this is something I think we have to be more sensitive to. I mean, that's a metal tap, I think. I don't use it, but if I come and put my hands on it and turn it and open it, or turn it on and then turn it off, and then someone else comes 5 minutes later and they put theirs on, I think there's really a high, a greater sort of potential liability there than just saying, it's free, everyone go ahead and get it. I just think it's a little premature. Maybe 2 or 3 weeks from now things change a little bit, but my personal feeling, unless I've got the system wrong, I just think it's still a little early. But anyway.
Well, you do have it slightly wrong. That nobody should touch the tap ever. It's not really a tap. It's like one of those outside hose things that you can attach a garden hose to, but there's no actual tap that you can turn. It's one of the ones that you would use what the plumbers call a school key that goes in to turn it if you wanted to turn it. But it's permanently open. The thing that activates it is a red push button. So you push it's an electric contactor. You press the button, and that causes the pump to pump water out through the tap. And as soon as you take your hand off the button, it goes off. But that doesn't change. It doesn't change your argument. Your argument's still valid. In order to work it, people are touching the plastic button that makes it go. But they shouldn't be touching the tap, and they shouldn't be attaching anything to the tap.
Well, Mr. Mayor, the thing has been kind of loosey-goosey in certain ways. And I see people putting both hands on so that they can use 2 thumbs or whatever to hold that red button in if they're filling up multiple jugs and stuff. So I think I'd lean on the air of caution on opening that up just presently. As Councillor Lamb mentioned, maybe give it a couple more or 3 weeks or follow the
Yeah, I would agree with that because we have no mechanism of disinfecting the button in between uses. Obviously we could put up signs asking people to only be one person there at a time and such, but somebody is still touching parts of it, and we'd be liable for people touching it. I know in Sunridge their tap has remained on, but the water is always flowing. You don't have to touch anything there, but they do have signs up, warning you to use at your own risk and that you should social distance while using the tap.
Okay, well, I seem to be hearing that the consensus is to leave it disabled, leave it as it is. Is there any disagreement with that? All right. I don't hear any disagreement. I'll ask one more time. If you disagree with that, what I've got here is that the Council of Municipality of Whitestone does hereby leave the public water tap disabled. So that's, if I don't hear any objection, I'll assume that's your...
And can you put in then to be reviewed at the next council meeting or something?
Oh, yeah, sorry, it says that. And that the above cancellation is supposed to be reevaluated as deemed necessary. So it'll come back again.
Sorry. Okay.
I need a mover and seconder for this. I didn't get one. I apologize. I'm getting ahead of myself here.
I'll move it. I'll second.
Okay, moved by Councillor Gorham Matthews, seconded by Councillor McEwen, we'll say. How about that?
Lynn Brennan.
Okay. Sorry, who was leaving?
Lynn Brennan.
Oh, Lynn. Thank you very much for hanging in. You're so quiet. Have a good night. All right. So the water tap is
Leaving
conference. Stay disabled.
Lynn Brennan.
So landfill matters. Now, I don't have a motion here, so I guess we're just going to have to wing this one. First of all, we don't have a report from our task force yet, and I'll give the members of the task force an opportunity to talk about some issues that they have, but I guess there is a concern around two things that I'm aware of. Number one is brush, and I'm talking small quantities. I'm not talking about huge amounts, but the kind that you would get from a typical household or recreational property, and that whole kind of yard waste, brush kind of stuff. And the second thing is modest quantities of commercial building materials, which we can't, which we said originally, if you recall, people could just take them to McDougall. Well, the problem is they can't take them to McDougall right now. So the only option for people who have that is to go and rent one of those disposal bins from a company that has an arrangement with somebody to dump them, right? So anyway, those are things where we're getting, I would say we're getting some pressure. We just, at our last meeting, we just agreed to carry on our new arrangement of 2 days each week for each landfill site with 2 attendants at each, and that is continuing to work. Unless people had some bad experiences on the weekend that I didn't hear about, but it seems to be working fine. So I don't know that we need to revisit that. But I guess I would just ask: are there any things that people feel we should be doing in the short term?
Yes, may I speak, Mr. Mayor?
You may.
When I spoke to the landfill attendants today when I was up there, they said that having the 2 of them there at this point has worked really well. On Sunday, they had over almost 300 people go through the dump, and if it had just been one person, it would have been a real struggle to keep everyone distanced and to keep everyone flowing through properly. So they're very supportive and appreciative of having the 2 of them working in tandem together. The only suggestion that they said is that at this point, having brush brought up to Alds, it could be done in a manner that everybody's still flowing through safely. And there's a lot of people that, are typically cleaning up brush at this time of year, so it would be helpful to people if they could take brush up to Alds. And the other thing that they mentioned was that people could probably bring metal as well and put metal in the metal bin at this point as well. Because of the flow of the landfill, they could do that safely and not be getting into other people's spaces. And those are 2 things that could be done that don't require receipts. So they could be done without the landfill attendants having to get too close and issue receipts. So those would be just my suggestions, is that perhaps we could add, instead of just household waste and recycling, that we'll also take brush at Alds now and open up the metal bins at each landfill as well.
Okay, those sound like 2 good suggestions. Are there any comments from our task force, or from? Oh,
you want to go ahead, Brian?
Doug, if you want to start, Joe, no problem. I could start if you want.
Okay, whatever. The brush thing, I think we've resolved a whole lot of these things, and it's unfortunate we didn't get it maybe to this particular council meeting. We have another back-to-back meeting coming up on Thursday because people had to leave our meeting this morning. and we couldn't really get some things resolved. I think one thing we do have is deliver brush up to one pickup per residence per year to Alds, and it sounds like it can be put out of the way, out of harm's way, as Beth mentioned there, as part of just a little routine of going in, go over, do your thing, and they can monitor the traffic flow with that one. The metal bins, well, I just don't know if it's putting too much extra little bit of business on the guys in the landfills to try to monitor and do that just yet. But certainly even at York, the bin sits there. It's pretty accessible. And as I recall, the bin at Alds, it has to be put in the ground or something to be able to properly put metal in it. So there's some potential issues with bins and access to them at the sites. As far as the household thing, household construction, let's say, and demolition, if you have a little bit of stuff floating around that you want to get rid of, hopefully we will come to grips with that on Thursday. But one thing I've asked the committee to consider is the equivalent of about 90 liter, which is about a 45-gallon drum, I believe, or equivalent bag of C&D. So you can break down bits of wood, trim, door, just small household type stuff. And you could take a bag of that to the landfill. But hopefully what we'll talk about further on that is how we want it received into the landfill. We don't want people coming in with a whole great big conglomeration of stuff and be taking 20 minutes to sort it out. So we've got to get some kind of instruction to people if we in fact go that way. I know the whole contractor thing of, Mr. Mayor, you mentioned commercial. I think we're hopefully staying away from commercial stuff into the landfills at this point in time. Not sure where we'll be going down the road, but I just don't think we can handle it the way we're set up in the landfills. There's some major rework to be done there, and it's not going to happen like in the next week or 2 weeks, month. I'm not sure when it will happen. And then there's budgetary constraints too when we start thinking of reworking things in the York Street site. Always we have a budgeted amount of, I believe it's $20,000 to put a wall in and put a container there for furniture. So, but brush would help people, and I don't know how council feel about letting them in to start putting metal into bins. The metal is being looked at in terms of the metal bin at York, for instance, will become the furniture bin, and the metal will be just dumped in a pile. And the same principle will be applied at Alds dump. So we won't have a metal bin per se at either site, and we hope to go out to a company and have them probably quote on picking up our metal and paying us to actually sort it out and take it away versus just giving it away free gratis like we do now. So anyway,
I guess in the interim, if I can just interject though, the bins, the metal bins that are there right now belong to Adams Brothers. I'll ask the clerk to correct me if I'm wrong, but so we can't just use them for something else.
That's right.
Are you suggesting that we're going to get rid of them, and how long is it before we're ready to do that? Is that something that we does that have to happen in a couple of weeks' time, or because if it isn't, then maybe we should. I realize we're missing a revenue stream, but until we're ready to do that, maybe we should just let them go. I honestly don't understand. My understanding from the original decision we made was that metal was okay, and in fact, in the stuff that I wrote to people about what was accepted, I included the metal, right? So I was a little surprised that it wasn't being accepted. And in fact, the landfill attendant on one occasion said to me, "How come the metal bins are closed?" And I said, "Gee, I didn't realize they were." But maybe Michelle, can you weigh in on this? But do you know what the situation is?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll let you know what I do know. The municipality owns 2 bins. Actually, we own 3. As of late last week, the 3rd bin that was budgeted for this year was received, and it was received at Adams Brothers, so that every time they take a bin from York, they bring an empty one to us and take a full one back, and same with Alds, where in the past they would have to come with an empty truck, take our bin, empty it, and then bring the bin back. So there was 2 transportation cycles, so that'll save some money. So the municipality does own 3 bins now, and that should allow...
So those are our bins?
We own 3 bins, yes. So that allows for the circular furniture-type waste to be moved around. And as Councillor McEwen said, I believe the intent was to stockpile the scrap metal on the ground, which is permitted under our ECAs on both locations. And one of the items for our new public works superintendent, maybe with the help of the deputy clerk, is to seek out companies that will purchase the metal. I know of 2, and I think that's probably all there are in this general area. And so that's on the list of things to do as we make the decision to move things around at the waste site. So as far as the C&D, I know I haven't been involved too much in the task force. I've tried to be helpful if I can, but I really haven't been to the meeting, so I'm not 100% sure where they've landed with C&D. Probably lots of discussion on that item as well.
Well, we're hoping to ease into this sort of step by step and rather slowly. And Mr. Mayor, we actually closed the landfills to anything other than household waste and recyclables. It's up in big bold letters right on the signs. And I assumed what you had in your letter in metal was just metal cans and recyclable metal that would go into the recycle bin, not the scrap pile, not scrap metal. Like, I didn't know we were...
No. I understand. Yeah, I guess I thought it was recyclable. It is recyclable. That's what happens to it. It gets melted down. And
well, it is, but not being received in the recycle bin with the...
I get you, yeah.
All that. But, I can see us opening up. If people have that much metal that they have to get rid of, like, it seemed to me that metal is one thing that I could keep in my back property here someplace until a month or so when things really get opened up and organized. It's the construction side of stuff that I thought was more of an issue, and we should try to work toward either council make a decision and say no C&D, especially commercial. We'd already put that out in our newsletter. Are we going to receive a limited amount of C&D? I can see that assisting people, myself included, to be able to take a container of broken down, whether it's flooring, whatever kind of construction stuff. There might even be some concrete in there. But right now, we don't want to have someone arrive with their great big container or the 45-gallon drum full of stuff. You dump it out on the ground and it just has no place to go because there's concrete, there's wood, there's fiber, non-fiber, all kinds of different issues with that. So we're really not there yet. I'm not sure what to say on that. Am I only confusing people?
No, I don't think so. I guess my question is there anything that we want to do in the short run other than, I mean, we have an option of simply waiting for the report of the task force and holding the line on what we're doing at present, which is working fine, I would say. It's just there's some people have stuff that they want to get rid of and they can't. That's all.
Could I say something, Mr. Mayor?
Absolutely.
When it comes to the dump, the metal recycling, like the bin that everything gets thrown into, the only thing that I could see would be anything with Freon, because then the guys have to charge and they have to write a receipt, and they would break that 6-foot social distance gap that we wanted to keep. I have had a lot of people ask me why they can't just dump stuff into the bin. So there are a lot of people that are looking to get rid of stuff because it's just the season, right? Springtime's here, moving into summer, and everybody wants to get cleaned up. So, I mean, the only thing I could see is the things that we charge for. If we said no to that, what we let people put stuff in the bins. As far as the construction waste aspect of it, on the committee, we are definitely at a crossroads on this one. I realize that we did pass a bylaw saying that we weren't going to let any contractors use the facility, which I can see it because we were trying to preserve the whole. Now, we do have an avenue. We can put stuff in bins and have it shipped out. We already put stuff in the furniture bin and have it shipped out, and from what the information that I've gathered, even though we charge fees, it actually cost us money. We never recover the amount that it costs us to dump that stuff. Now, construction waste, we could most definitely recover the cost to do so. And I've had, well, it's over 12 separate contractors in the area. And when I'm saying contractors, I mean a lot of them are small guys where it's like a one-man show. Many of them are retirees that do little odd jobs in construction work to supplement their income. They need this facility to take their waste. And reason being, one, I mean, you're right, a contractor could go to McDougall. Now, in order to be a legitimate contractor, you have to have all proper insurances and WSIB coverage and, you know, the yellow sticker on your truck, yellow sticker on your trailer. You also have to be subjected to a credit check, from what I read on McDougall's webpage. And the minimum fee that you can put down is a $1,500 deposit in order to use that facility as a contractor. Now, most of these people that are one-man shows, they don't have a yellow sticker because they don't need it. They don't have those insurances because they don't need it. They don't even have a registered business because they're supplementing their income and they're making less than $30,000 a year. Now, there's a lot, and I mean, there's dozens of people here that work in this township, and they have all said the same thing. One, we don't even pick up materials as contractors anymore. It all gets delivered to site. They pay for the permit here. The project is here. Why would I have to drive all the way to McDougall to get rid of smaller amounts of waste? And when I say smaller amounts, a contractor, if he got a truckload a week, that's a small amount of garbage. That's not a large amount of garbage. A large amount of garbage would be something like a demolition permit for an entire cottage. Now, I agree that that amount shouldn't come into the dump. But that could be handled as part of our permit process. I don't know how we would do it or what we would have to do, where if you're going to take down a building, you have to get a bin, or that amount of garbage can't come into our dump. But for the majority of the contractors here, they need that service. And I know that other councillors have been approached by multiple different contractors on this. And now we're saying that we're going to put restrictions on household C&D. To me, we can't do that. I mean, the taxpayer is not trying to beat the system that we put in place. But to me, it seems like we're trying to build a system that's going to beat the taxpayer. And I don't agree with that.
Well, as Brian said, we're at opposite ends of the spectrum on this one, because I sort of say contractors can get their bins and they can take their materials elsewhere, because we don't have space at the dumps. We don't have equipment at the dumps. It costs $20,000 to set up for a bin installed that you can throw stuff into back at Alls. I don't know how the heck you're going to put 2 or 3 bins in place to receive this stuff if you're going to set it up at York Street. It's going to cost big bucks. Nothing's impossible if you want to spend the money on it. And the other thing, it's not budgeted for even Alds to put in bins to receive C&D, especially on a commercial basis. So it sounds great, but I think we've got some hard decisions to make here. I feel sorry for the contractors, but...
Well, it's not just the contractors, because like I said, that's fine. As a contractor, I don't take your garbage. Now it's on the homeowner. So even those small amounts, the homeowner has to bring it in.
Well,
Mr. Mayor?
And I mean, it's fine to order a bin when you have a project that warrants a bin. But for many jobs, there is absolutely no need to spend on a bin.
Wow.
You get, you need a shingle patch done on your roof because some shingles blew off. You want a contractor to drive all the way to McDougall or a homeowner to drive all the way to McDougall to drop off 2 bundles of shingle? Or, the cheapest bin that we found is $400 flat rate for 2 bundles of shingles?
And you don't have a good example because even just today, our manager said they could set a place aside for shingles for small jobs of shingles at landfill sites. So there are ways.
We passed no shingles and no construction waste. That's all I'm saying. So we've already said that.
Okay, folks, I think what's happening is we're doing the work of the committee here on the without a motion on the floor. So I got to put a stop to this, I'm afraid.
Well, can I say something?
Yes, you may. Go ahead, Councilor.
I've listened, and I agree, Mr. Mayor, with what you're saying. This is a big area, right? And the only way we're ever going to settle this, I say settle it because it seems like there's some disagreement, is to have, in my opinion, kind of a separate council meeting at some point on the landfill site, right? But that let's put that aside, and we can talk about that at some other time. I do know this, that people pay taxes, and part of their taxes go to the landfill site, right? That's what they expect, and they, in fact, there's some people that think that's all they get. It isn't, but that's what they think, and and I know this, that if we shut off and we don't have a stream for people to go to, okay, that it's going to be trouble because they're going to find a place. If they can't take it to McDougall and we won't take it in Whitestone, it's going to be left in ditches, it's going to be left wherever they can, and it's going to not work out well. So we have to come up with a system that works well for everyone. And I don't want, and I've never supported, that we take 12 items and do them all in 1 year and say, there you go, because that isn't the way this should be done. In my opinion, we should chew off 3 or 4 or 5 things. We talked about clear bags and other things. We should chew off a few things that we can do. But I do know this, that what we're doing now in terms of manning I don't have any problems with us manning it and continuing to man it the way it is for now, right? Secondly, I do agree with Councillor Gorham Matthews and others that we should be able to take brush. We made that decision months ago that we should be able to take brush up at Alls, because I assume up at Alls, at some point we can burn that brush. I'm not sure that we should say, well, it's only 1 load, because again, if they have a second load, right now they have the option to pay $7 or $10 or whatever it is. But maybe 1 load for now. But at some point you've got to address what happens if you have a second load. Now I'm not talking trunks and stuff you can burn in the fireplace, but there's all kinds of branches and stuff like that people have. I see the trailers up and down Canning and the subdivision that they want to do something with the brush. So I think we should open it up, not York Street, but Alls, unless for some reason the Public Works people say we can't do it. And if we need to say, it's a second load, it's an individual. I'm not saying construction stuff, or businesses, but I do think we have to address that. There's also this is like a big storm coming at us, okay? There are people that have all kinds of stuff. What are you going to do if you have, a dishwasher? Your dishwasher goes kaplunk, right? And you get a new one, you've got the old one. Before, we used to be able to take it down and get it, we put it in a bin and I guess shipped away. We can't say to people, we're not going to take that anymore. And no, you can't take it over to McDougall. You just go suck it up and put it in your backyard. There has to be an option for everything, right? So, but that's for a separate meeting, I think. So I'm fully supportive of continuing to man the way we are. I'm fully supportive of being able to put brush up at Alls, and I'm fully supportive of normal sort of metal, not contractor metal or anything like that, but normal kind of metal products going into the metal bin if the people say that it can be done, right? And again, we're talking, for an interim sort of basis until we get this thing, get the report done. But we're never going to finish it tonight. We're never going to finish this argument. We'll be going on an hour from now. And so we can work this out with a separate meeting, I think. But for now, we've got to open up something, or I'll tell you, there's going to be more and more stuff just dumped at the side of the landfill sites, and we're going to, be in trouble. So anyway, those are my thoughts.
Okay. Does anyone object to us accepting, a single pickup truck or trailer load of brush at Alls is doing that on an interim basis, or should we leave it till?
Mr. Mayor, that's the one thing, or one of the things that we came to do as a committee even. And as Councillor Lamb mentioned, we pretty well had come to that agreement even in the last meeting quite some time ago. So if in fact now they can handle it physically and onto the site, and we were told that they can do that with the brush. There are quite a number of things, and it's kind of a manpower thing right now too, with two guys trying to keep the distance and organize and keeping people flowing through there. So got to be careful how much pressure we put on them in there real quick. But the metal, if there's a metal bin to throw stuff in, then I guess that's fine too. But to open it up carte blanche, I think we're close to bringing a report to council, and maybe we should have sent that out today with the exception of C and D and had it looked at item by item. But
well, we probably wouldn't have had time to go through it anyway, but without having a separate meeting. But no, I'm just wondering if you feel comfortable moving with the brush today, we could do that as a single item. Can I get a mover and seconder? If you want, we'll test it that way. If you want to move ahead with brush right now and nothing, and just brush at all.
If that really is of assistance to people, I will move that in a moment, because I don't think that's a big issue right at this point in time. And moving forward, we can handle the brush at all.
Okay, so Councillor McEwen moves. Is there a seconder for brush?
I'll second brush.
Okay, Councillor Gar Matthews. So what I'm writing down is that the Council of the Municipality of does hereby I'm going to say agree to accept brush, to accept I don't know. We're going to have to define it, but I'm going to just say small amounts or single loads, maybe single. Well, that could be large too. Small amounts of.
Go with the equivalent of a pickup load.
Small amounts of brush at Alds Road site only. Effective when?
Now.
Madam Clerk, can we do this? Are you okay? Are you okay? Are we getting ahead of ourselves here?
If you don't mind, Mr. Mayor, I just have a question, because I'm thinking in terms of our landfill attendants and how they have to manage this. So, are they small amounts, unlimited amounts per person? So a household could bring 10 small truckloads or small trailer loads, because honestly we'd have no way of tracking at this point how many loads came from each household. So as long as that's understood, that if you have a trailer, you could just keep coming back with lots of brush as long as it's a small amount. It becomes a large amount, but that's a question the landfill attendant would have to ask. So there's no cost, is what I'm assuming, because we don't want to have any money exchange. So those are the two things that I would question. They sometimes know who the contractors are who are doing this work, and sometimes they don't. So we just want to be careful that the landfill attendants know what to ask people and how to manage the program once council makes the decision. And I'd have to sort it out in my head. I'd have to make sure that I think you're on the right track, because we get calls at the office regularly, and people are very angry about. They were fine for the first couple of weeks, but the longer we go, the crosser they get. In fact, I had a gentleman today, and I permitted him to dump some things at the Alds Road landfill simply because he was becoming quite abusive to myself and staff. So we just let him in because we don't like conflict. So you can tell people are getting frustrated. But back to the brush, it just has to be abundantly clear what's permitted so that the landfill attendants can manage the program.
But how many?
If I could, we went through this today and we came up with a definition of what the brush would be. And it was the equivalent of a truckload per household and residential only, and it was clean brush up to a certain size, because we don't want great big chunks of stuff thrown in there. If we have to handle it and chip it, it's probably what we can do, because we can't burn it, unfortunately. So there was a lot of thought that went into this, and we're kind of sort of shortcutting the whole thing.
Okay, look, I'm sorry then. I'm going to, in the interest, I should have stuck to my guns. We need to get this stuff given to us by the task force. What we'll do is we'll try to set up a meeting that we can deal with this. You know, our next regular meeting is June, whatever it is.
June 1st?
June 1st, yeah. And I don't know, depending on what else, we may have to have a separate meeting.
I think you do, Mr. Mayor.
Could I offer a suggestion?
I'm sorry,
because I was just wondering if I could offer a suggestion for the brush. We still pass out the free brush load ticket.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, it would normally have gone out in the May newsletter, and of course we didn't get the May newsletter. So to your question, no, there was no free ticket.
I was just going to suggest that we could honor that ticket and that ticket alone, and I thought that would alleviate some of the stress off the attendants. But the people, they could at least get rid of one load.
We were shooting for the next council meeting to present, hopefully, with maybe the exception of the C&D stuff, which is going to have to be a major discussion with council by the sound of things. But we had covered off all kinds of information out of about 8 items. The only one that we were landlocked on big time was C&D type stuff. But we were shooting for presentation to council on the next council meeting.
Mr. Mayor, if I might suggest that we limit it to one load now, but that we have a special meeting before June the 1st on the task force report and on a separate meeting. Otherwise, we're going to, I think, in June 1st, get all bogged down. I mean, I think we need a separate meeting to discuss the landfill, where we've got, a couple hours or whatever to work our way through some of this stuff, right? But Michelle's right that this is like a big storm coming at us, right? And the people are only going to be patient for so long, right? And I'm hopefully it's not too much longer until we can address these things, right? But we have to be able to say, here's what you've got. You've got a vacuum cleaner that isn't working. We can't say, well, just keep it at your house. You've got to be able to take it somewhere, right? So where is that, right? And so we've got to be able to address all these things, and the sooner the better. If the report is just about ready, then let's have a meeting later this week, early next week, whenever, right? But for now, let them bring a load of brush in. If they've got a second one, just say hold off. There's a meeting in a few days, and we'll decide on a second one, right?
If
Give
I
them
may,
some relief.
I don't believe the landfill attendants will be able to easily track how many loads a household brought in, but we can use the
Guess what, Michelle? They never have in the past anyway.
Well, we're trying to get beyond that, Council.
Yeah, no, but I'm just saying they never asked for that brush ticket, many of them.
No, but that has been a problem. We got out of doing that kind of thing, and now it's hard to get back into it, but that's the...
but for a week or two, it's not going to be the end of the world.
Maybe we don't advertise that you can bring your brush, but at least if they come to the gate, we let them in. We have another meeting on Thursday.